The letters of 1st and 2nd Peter were written by the Apostle Peter between AD 60 and AD 68 to the believers in 5 regions of Asia Minor, which is what we know as modern-day Turkey. Here, Peter wasn't writing to a specific church, he was writing to a region of early followers of Jesus. And for these followers of Jesus in the 1st century, abuse and persecution were commonplace. So, who better to write the believers a letter than Peter, who himself willingly suffered persecution, imprisonment, and even rejoiced at the fact that he was worthy to suffer for the Lord's sake. So, near the end of his life, Peter wrote to comfort and encourage these believers that were being persecuted. In the first line of his letter, he introduces himself as Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ. And I want you to catch the significance here in the phrase of Jesus Christ. That classifier of Jesus Christ was not attached to any other New Testament office like teachers of Jesus Christ or prophets of Jesus Christ, only of apostles of Jesus Christ. And that's significant because Peter did nothing to explain or justify his apostleship like authors of some of the other letters have done. Here, Peter is straightforward in the authority that was given to him by Jesus as an apostle. So considering this, the believers in these 5 regions of Asia Minor would receive these letters with a sense of importance and urgency because they came from someone who had walked with Jesus and had been given authority by Jesus as an apostle. An apostle simply means a representative of the one who sent him. So Peter is writing as Jesus' representative to these believers. With that in mind, let's start in 1 Peter. Here, Peter is preparing the believers to guard their hearts from the world and the persecutions that they were going to face. He reminds them that they were chosen by God to share his gospel and of their hope in Jesus, and because of this, the trials that they were experiencing during this time could be seen as a gift instead of a curse, because it gave them a chance to show others the generosity, the love, and the hope of Jesus that would far outweigh anything that they were enduring. See, Peter writes that their faith was of greater worth than gold, and even though they were being refined by fire, their genuine faith in Jesus would result in praise, glory, and honor. In this letter, Peter is hopeful that the believers' imitation of Jesus and demonstration of the kingdom would give power to their words as they witness to God's mercy and truth about Jesus in their areas of life. Come on, talk about being hope carriers. And throughout 1 Peter, Peter reminds the believers that they are God's people, born again into a new family with living hope through Jesus' resurrection and the Spirit's power. That they were called to live differently than the world around them, and he urged all believers, husbands, wives, elders, leaders of the church to live holy lives amongst those that were persecuting them, reminding them that he who called them is holy, so be holy in all that you do. And by doing so, it would give them a living testimony to Jesus. See, Peter comforted them about what they were enduring and reminded them that Jesus also suffered and that their suffering would grow their faith and purify their souls. And as he continues, Peter also brings clarity to their mission, which is to imitate Jesus and bear witness to God's mercy and kingdom to the world. And he asked them to care for one another out of eagerness to serve God and to love one another deeply from the heart. And that is such a great picture of who Jesus is, caring, a mirror of the kingdom of God and living hope. And Peter's words of comfort and encouragement would be needed because as we see in 2 Peter, he is warning the people to guard their hearts against false teachings and false teachers. See, Peter's second letter is like a road sign warning of things coming up, of things ahead. It's an intense and passionate address to the same people he had just encouraged in the previous letter. Here, he urges the believers to live lives that would glorify God and issues 2 warnings against corrupt teachers who are leading them astray of their way of life and the distorted theology that they were teaching. He starts by challenging the believers to continue growing in their faith, love, and service to God. And in 2 Peter 12, he's pretty straightforward when he says, I will remind you about these things, even though you already know them and are standing firm in the truth that you have been taught. Why is that? Well, because there would be false teachers among you that would teach false gospels and deny Jesus, and many are going to follow their evil teaching and immorality. There would be others that would twist the words written by Paul to justify their own lawless actions, and this would bring sudden destruction. But Peter continued to encourage the believers to grow in their knowledge of Christ, to not pay attention to the scoffers who were casting doubts in the minds of the believers regarding the return of the Lord, and assured them that the Lord would indeed return and establish a new heaven and a new earth. See, the words penned by Peter in these two letters reminded the believers that no matter what circumstances they were facing or what their surroundings looked like, in Jesus, they were God's chosen people, called to be witnesses to His grace and truth, called to live holy lives that represent the kingdom of God and point people to the eternal living hope, which is Jesus. See, the words penned by Peter in these two letters remind us that no matter what circumstances we are facing, in Jesus, we too are God's people, called to be witnesses to His grace and truth, called to live holy lives that represent the kingdom and point people to the eternal living hope, which is Jesus.